Hello and welcome to Warblog. Today we're looking at the Venezuela crisis, July 2017. Essentially, there's been about 112 people killed in about 110 days. So it's pretty much a person a day, so it's quite significant. I haven't really sort of got my head fully around it all, but yeah, it looks as though the government is looking to change the constitution or certain aspects of the way it rules about on the 30th. There's another 4 days, so it's building up to a boiling point. I haven't read everything through. I really wish I could sort of spend that sort of time to get all the detail in there. But one of the things that sort of is quite interesting was an attack by an actor called Oscar Perez, who flew over the Supreme Court buildings in a helicopter, dropping hand grenades on it in Caracus, and shot at the Interior Ministry whilst doing what? Whilst dropping leaflets out, talking about what was happening. The one thing that I have done on this is I've included, it's essentially a National Guard sort of come out, so I don't know what the balance is because I've not played this, and secondly, I've not played a police. As you can see, these are police units and protesters for quite a while. The Turkish one was a sort of start, and I didn't really finish that, to be quite honest. In fact, if you look at it, it's still unfinished. But here, I'm trying to sort of, apply the protester rules, police rules, and then essentially we've got some insurgents. So there's the Oscar Perez helicopter as an insurgent, but we also got the irregulars. Now these are fictitious. I just want to point that out. They come on turn 15 just to put things into perspective, because as I said here, the scenario includes irregular units that appear on 15. These are essentially fictitious and reflect the natural culmination of extended civil unrest into the move into civil war. So, I mean, essentially, some of the headlines are, is it moving into civil war? And there is one where it's sort of got some people marching down the street with flags, but I think they're sort of more, I don't know what they are. I can't find the article now. But it's sort of getting that way. But I've no idea sort of where things appear. And one of the things that's sort of quite apparent, you can't really have, I mean, there's Caracus in there. You can't really have protesters and police in there at the same time fighting, although you can coexist. So protesters and police will appear, and they might be in there in the same instance. But in order to fight each other, one of them would have to move out and then attack into it, which sort of doesn't make a lot of sense. But it doesn't have to make a huge amount of sense to sort of reflect the fact that there's quite a lot of activity going on in Venezuela. Obviously the geography is quite interesting because it's all sort of up here along the coast with some sort of plains. These are sort of more parky areas. They classify them as jungle because I can't remember to turn everything into plains, but they're more sort of open jungle, whereas the dense sort of jungle is sort of down here. I think that's about Venezuela, right? And then of course we've got Brazil and the highly civilized Colombia. Yeah, so that's that. This is actually a country, but I couldn't bother to put the name on because country names are quite big. I suppose I could put it in quite small, but there's not a lot of point. I think one of these others is a country. I mean, that's Grenada there. So anyway, that's that. So we'll give it a whirl, so to speak. Now, as I said, I can't remember how these sort of work. So the first thing we've got is the government turn. Well, the government, to be quite honest, it should be the protesters that go first, because the government hasn't got anything really to do. But I think we're going to, if that's the case, why not? Let's attack some protesters here. Now, when you attack protesters, it's not sort of like an attack. This is just police operations against protesters. And they do have special rules, but I can't actually remember how they work. And we dispersed. When you DE, you don't kill all the protesters, you disperse them. So what we've managed to do there is disperse those protesters. And here, and I think we're probably going to do a lot of dispersion here. So this was an exchange because they basically rolled really badly. So they actually took a depression there, and these have also taken a depression, but they were rolling on sort of 4-to-1 odds, and I'm not sure how that actually works, but they were in jungle, which gave them much better odds. So the police are not sort of guaranteed to push things over, but I mean, even under these sort of good defensive conditions and the sort of the peculiarity of them not actually being in the city, you know, they had good 4-to-1 odds. But the thing is, it's sort of, you know, it's symbolic of what's happening. But I think what I'm really trying to portray in this scenario, if we ever get that far, is the sort of the scale of numbers. So we're not going to move that police unit. We might as well have a blast against this one, see what we can do. So there's another one gotten rid of. 2 police units here. So they're defender retreat. So they've retreated both into that hex. And that's pretty much it. So it's the end of their turn. So the protesters are being rudely rebuffed, so much so that there's not many of them left. But essentially, there are other places where we can protest, and as protesters we're trying to protest things, so we've successfully moved into some cities to carry out some protestation, and now, as you see, we've got a lot more protesters coming on. So the police operations are now got to sort of contend with, you know, quite a lot of protesters just sort of appearing here and there. And so what we've got is this sort of this cat and mouse game of police, you know, knocking protesters back. Obviously, in this sense, failing, getting an exchange against that unit, you know, obviously causing them damage. So each one of these would be a headline activity, and I got some of these articles from the live map thing where they sort of, you know, the headline is, riots and protests outside Maracaibo City, 1 policeman killed. You know, which could have been what happened there. 1 policeman killed, 3 protesters killed, or something like that. You know, I mean, the police didn't necessarily just completely overwhelm them and disperse them. I don't want to think that they're sort of, you know, because they're obviously not killing them all, but people are dying. 1 person a day is dying in this scenario. So it is quite significant. And so essentially, one of the other things I'm trying to sort of present here is the, I mean, obviously there's probably more. It's not in any way symbolic. It's not a sort of a close action simulation of sort of inner city protests, so to speak. But what the point I'm trying to get to here is, you've only got so many police resources. For example, do I leave this one in San Cristobal and try and take these out, or do I leave it there in the sort of fear that maybe some protesters will suddenly appear here, or you know, what do you want to do? Now, San Cristobal is worth 5 points. This place here is worth 10 points. Barquisimeto. So, but the thing is, I've got this person down here, so I think I'll use him to come down here and maybe sort of see whether I can make some progress against these protesters. So essentially, as the police units, you're trying to sort of move your units to sort of possibly cover places where there are too many protesters, etc., etc. You know, again, it's not a sort of game where I think you could say, oh, how can I win this? I mean, the problem being to the main extent that I don't know what the game balance is like. I mean, we seem to have cleared quite a few protesters in the first turn, and again, we shouldn't really have sort of gone. The police shouldn't have got, or the government shouldn't have gone first, really, but I'll correct that in a bit. But I'm not sure whether or not there'll be too many protesters or not enough, etc., etc. But we'll just continue without too much more sort of prevaricating like that. Now, this guy. Okay. So Venezuelan government. So we're going to try and get rid of these people from Caracus. And that was a DE, so we did manage to disperse those. Now again, do we move out of Caracas and take these little places? I think we're going to try and move him down here. So I think the thing to sort of pick up and learn from here maybe is that we need more police. You know, in order to cover everywhere. We can't cover everywhere. I think I'm happy with sort of that. We've moved that guy. I don't really want to sort of start moving him out. And we'll see what happens on the next turn. Okay, so it's now the protesters' turn. And now, yeah, they definitely need to be going the other way around, because these people are sort of now capturing their own places. Ignore that. Let's see what happens when we attack the police, because I think basically the protesters can or not. Oh no. No, it seems as though they can't do it. I'll have to have a look into that. That's why I'm a bit rusty on how the protesters actually work and what they're intended to do. I wonder what it actually says in the rule book about protesters, because I did sort of start writing up the rules, and I might have made some notes that will let me know what they actually do. So we don't have protesters or police written up. Military police, so I'll have to write them up basically and figure out what they do. But I think basically the protesters have a special skill. Although they've got 0-0, when they're facing police they actually get a strength factor of like 1, and I think that that's somehow got misplaced in that combat rule. How much time have we got left? Not enough. Now let me see if I can just have a look. Okay, I've made some changes, and let's see whether they actually do anything. So we've got some protesters here. I'm going to try and attack the police in there. Okay, well, I was attacking on a value of 1, and the police were defending on 1.8, so that was a 1 to 2, and they got an attack of retreat. So this forced the protesters back, but the important thing is, if it's protesters against police and nothing else, they get a factor of 1, and that factor is not multiplied by anything else. It's really just to sort of reflect the fact that they can demonstrate, they can create something. It's quite powerful really, because they'll get 1, and if there's 2 of them they get 2, etc, etc. There's no surround bonuses or anything like that though. So that's that. So in this instance we can attack these people, and did quite well, but it's still 1 to 2 with an exchange. So it's sort of well balanced in the sense that the protesters really aren't going to do much against the police, but when they're overwhelmed by numbers, then who knows. So we're still sat down here protesting, taking out these little cities. These are police units, not to be confused with protesters, which are exclamation marks. So that's the end of that turn. Okay, so now we have, the police shouldn't really entrench. Let me stop that as well. Okay, I'll actually stop the police from entrenching from now on, and just to sort of get rid of these stupid entrenchment markers, I'll just move things out temporarily. Okay, so it's now the protesters' turn again, and let's just see whether or not we can cause any problems here. 1 to 1 and an exchange, so obviously some fierce riots going on in Valera, etc, etc. Now I'm going to I've got about 20 seconds left on this, so you can see how it works. I mean, I've played it with a degree of explanation as opposed to sort of just playing it through and allowing you to watch gameplay progress. But It'll probably take a while, but if you want to play that yourself, then sign up and give it a whirl. Okay, I'll speak to you later. Bye.